Welcome everyone. Oh gosh, today you're going to see me fangirl a bit. I've got Aaron Abke on the show. But first, in case this is your first time listening to Conscious Conversion, we are a weekly podcast about how we bridge the gap between business and spirit, money and meaning, technology and regeneration in a wildly changing world. In a time of so much polarity and uncertainty, this podcast explores how together we are connecting across the planet, across our differences, and across dimensions as we build the new earth together. And I'm Sarah Yamtich, your host. And I'm almost speechless because I'm so fangirly over today's guest, Aaron Abke. I'm really excited to have this discussion. We were just talking before I hit record, so I'm going to repeat myself a bit, Aaron. But I discovered you back in 2020 when a friend of mine recommended your YouTube playlist about the Law of One. And it was in the midst of so much shocking polarization. I was living in Costa Rica. I had just moved here in 2019. And when the shit hit the fan in the world, you know, everything like up was down, down was up, left was right. Everything was inside out, upside down.
And the Great Tribulation began.
Exactly. And your work was a balm to my soul. It really was. It helped. It really helped me come to a place of neutrality. I had gone down all the dark rabbit holes. I was just like, holy shit, what is down here? This is wild. I went as far as I could go. And your teaching and your leadership and sort of your strength amidst that was really helpful. For those that don't know, Aaron Abke's got a really strong YouTube presence and Instagram presence. I consider you a teacher. He takes very esoteric concepts and teachings and ancient teachings, and he makes them really digestible for the mainstream. Talks, very clearly, slowly, so that you can really unfold and feel it all and integrate everything that otherwise is unfathomable. So thank you.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate that. And when I make my content, it's with the exact kind of person you just described in mind, somebody who is either feeling lost or is going through a hard time and needs some kind of spiritual upliftment. I mean, every video I make has that in mind. So every time I hear that kind of reflection, it really means a lot.
Oh, well, you're doing a good job, man.
Thank you.
Yeah. How long, this isn't in my official line of questions, but I'm just curious personally, like how long have you been making videos? I haven't done a lot of deep research about your history.
I think the first video I made was July of 2018. So it'll be 4 years in July, I think. Okay.
So I caught on about 2 years later.
Yes.
Yeah, about exactly. Okay.
Yeah.
Well, awesome. So I like to just go in deep fast, and I know that you're totally equipped for that.
Hell yeah.
So I want to start out by asking the question of what is your soul's purpose in this incarnation, in this moment on the planet right now?
Yes. What a great question to start with. So, obviously I love teaching. It's my biggest passion. But as a Law of One teacher, if you're not familiar with the Law of One as a listener, it's essentially to me, it's the most profound channel text ever delivered to humanity. And it was channeled in the 1980s from a social memory complex that identified itself as Ra. And if you're familiar with channeled works or people who channel, you'll notice how a lot of them, they almost always speak in the plural. They'll say, we this, we that. And that's because the we they're referring to is a social memory complex, meaning it's a group mind, a shared mind with a planetary civilization that, you may be talking to one entity who's actually doing the channeling while the other, 6 million are scattered around the universe doing stuff, but they're all sharing one mind. So they speak to 3 people, a channeler, a questioner, and a scribe, and they just explain the nature of the universe in a question-answer format. And one of the first things they ask Ra about is, where's our planet right now? And Ra explains how we're at this transition point between density levels of consciousness. And a density level refers to a concentration of light. So we are moving from third density into fourth density right now as a planet, or from the yellow ray correlating to the solar plexus chakra into the green ray or heart chakra. So we're moving from the density of separation into the density of love and unity. And so what I am absolutely geeked about every day when I wake up is how do I aid in this transition of our planet moving into a fourth density planet, awakening humanity to the reality of love and oneness. And I have obviously my YouTube channel where I do that. I have some courses, and I'm working on putting all my courses into one platform right now in a couple of months called 4D University, which will have about 4 or 5 different courses in it, from everything from, teachings about how to master your mind, how to master your state of consciousness, how to upgrade your spiritual intelligence, as well as like breathwork practices and practices to activate your Kundalini Shakti and truly ascend to a state of fourth density consciousness in this life. And so, I wake up every day with more purpose than I ever imagined I could contain in one body, which is a pretty fun way to wake up.
Yeah, that's everything. That's what we all, there's no risk of getting depressed if you wake up with so much divinely inspired purpose every morning.
Great way of putting it. Yes.
That's incredible. And what's also beautiful is that I feel like you inspire others as well. So by teaching people this, you can help, like you did, for me in 2020, is like helping move people into that place of neutrality so that they can then find the drive, as opposed to the hopelessness and the despair or the anxiety. Once you have that place of neutrality, you can find the drive to move forward. And so I think you help inspire that so much.
Yeah. Well, thank you for saying that, because that's absolutely something that I want to do for the world, is inspire people to pursue their passion and what their soul's purpose is. I think that's such a huge aspect of sort of the way forward right now, is that we have to get out of this collective slave matrix society we're in, where we work a 9-to-5 job to make a paycheck that, 40% of it gets taken by a corrupt government to do very corrupt things. And we just barely pay the rent and scrape by. What a depressing life, but this is the way that we've been conditioned and wired to believe that's normal. And one of the things Ra says in the Law of One is that it's not normal, that they actually want to help our planet realize this, that the 9-to-5 work week and taxation and basically everything we do on this planet is enslavement. And enslavement is the negative polarity, and Ra is a part of the positive polarity. So we have to really reshape the way we think about society and everything in society in terms of economy, technology. How do we use these things in a way that benefits everybody and not just a handful of, wealthy elite banking families who become overlords of everybody else? That's a negatively polarized, what they call service to self-based planet that we're heading towards right now. But thankfully, we're, due to COVID and so many of the other, globalist agendas being carried out right now, people are waking up like never before, like flowers blossoming everywhere, of people realizing, oh, wow, myself included, actually. I really did not understand. I thought I understood, but I had no clue the degree or the magnitude to which our planet really is captured by powerful, wealthy elites who have been running the show behind the scenes for hundreds and maybe thousands of years. And if we're going to truly become a planet of love and unity, we have to collectively heal that shadow through forgiveness and love, and essentially stop feeding into it, right? Which is what we're unknowingly doing. So another interesting aspect of my career is, how do I encourage people to pursue their passions and leave that old system behind, which is a scary thing for people? And then, of course, how do we raise awareness of the ways that we are contributing to the sort of debt slave matrix that we all live in?
You touched on so much there. First, I just want to say I totally agree. Like, I thought I knew. I thought I was a real sort of skeptic and that I was sort of anti-establishment. I thought I was like, like a truth seeker. Like, I am a truth seeker. I always have been. And I really felt like I had some level. I mean, I watched Zeitgeist back in, I don't know, early 2000s. Like,
Right, yeah.
I had some level of awareness, and yet still I didn't understand the depth of my hypnosis until the last couple of years. Because
Yeah.
even as a critical thinker, as somebody who is anti-establishment, as somebody who was sort of born that way, I still was deeply entrenched into the system.
Yeah.
Even as I questioned it, I was still acting within it. And I still am to this day. I mean, we all do to a degree, unless you're living in the mountains as a hermit.
Yeah.
But the really beautiful part of this awakening, this sort of the devastation of waking up to knowing that to finding out that you've been in a slave system or that your humanity has been in a slave system for arguably several thousand years,
Yeah.
The beautiful part of that is how exciting it is when you realize that we're at a turning point, or like you said before we hit record, we're at this apex point.
Yeah. Yeah. We really are at the apex point. I mean, we sort of touched on this before we jumped into the interview, but I really do feel strongly, I feel it intuitively, not just as a thought, that we are probably living in the most insane moment in human history. I mean, I think we can all agree that there has never been more collective insanity manifesting than now before this. So really the only question is, will we ever be more insane than this right now? And I can't imagine how that would be true either, because, I think Mother Gaia, as we go into this transition out of separation consciousness into unity consciousness, she's kind of like shaking the floorboards and bringing everything to the surface so we can see what's in the closet, in the shadows, and heal those things. And this collective insanity and this, the term I like to use is Stockholm syndrome, where it's like we're so in the hands of our abusers that we're even defending our abusers to an extent. I don't think we've ever seen this before to this level, and I don't think we'll ever see it again. So we can sort of appreciate that, right? Like, hey, high five, look where we incarnated. This is pretty rad. And then we can be agents of change, right? And that's one of the things I really am passionate about waking people up to, because there's this huge rift in the spiritual community I see now with what's happening in the world, where I think what it really is people are afraid to talk about what's really happening because of the polarization and because of the way everything is so taboo from mainstream media and whatnot. But it's like, if you try to call out, not in a way that makes anybody evil or wrong, but you just say, hey, did you guys notice that this is happening? People say, hey, stop that. Don't talk about the world. You're making it worse. If you draw any attention to what's happening in the world, all you're doing is strengthening it. Just be quiet and meditate and teach about spirituality. And I just feel compassion for those people, because I'm like, man, you're so missing it. You're so missing it. Nothing in the universe is a mistake, is happening on accident. All of it is inviting us for self-actualization, to integrate more self-awareness. And if you think the world is separate from you in any way, then you have separation consciousness left to heal. Because when I look out into the world, I just see a reflection of myself. In the same way that when I healed my ego, my dark night of the soul, my shadows, I had to face my pride, my greed, my corruption, my arrogance, my selfishness. We have to face those things within ourselves and heal them. So when I look out into the world and I see all of this unbelievable amount of corruption everywhere you look, I just go, yep, that was all in me. All of it was in me. So I was contributing to it without even knowing it. So I can't feel anything but compassion and understanding for those people who are carrying out this corruption. I can certainly understand how hard it must be to find yourself coming into enormous sums of wealth, billions of dollars, or enormous amount of fame and fortune. And then all of a sudden you have enough power to manipulate people to your own advantage. There was a time in my life I absolutely would have probably taken that choice, right? So I can't make anybody wrong, but you think I'm not going to talk about it? You got another thing coming. I'm a spiritual teacher, so this is what I do. I help people raise their awareness, right? So the world isn't separate from me. Humanity's not separate from me. Humanity's suffering is my suffering. So I am moved with deep love and compassion when I see these forms of suffering in the world, and I have great desire and motivation to bring change to that world. Because I'm sorry, maybe you can do it, but I can't separate myself from the world. I can't say, oh, I'll just cover my eyes, close my ears, la, la, la. You know, people with horrible intentions for humanity aren't taking over. That's not happening. Let me just meditate. To me, that's just bypassing an escapism. So I say what's really cutting edge and what's really spiritual is how do we meet these forms of darkness in our world with love and light and bring change in a way that the darkness can't stop. That's what's exciting to me, and that's what I like to talk about right now.
Fuck yeah. How do you suggest we individually or collectively confront that darkness? I mean, obviously there's the confrontation of the darkness within.
Yeah.
What some people call shadow work or whatever. There's that piece. But then collectively, when we look at the rest of the world, how do we confront that?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah, well, that's a great point. Firstly, we have to confront it within ourselves. And that begins with seeing what's happening in the world triggers me. So, people say, oh, I don't watch the news. I don't do any of this stuff. Okay, none of us watch the news, right? Who watches the news? I don't know anybody. But we are on social media. We do see what's happening in the world. Like I do see that Justin Trudeau is hacking the bank accounts of Canadian citizens for donating to the trucking convoy. I do see these things happening. And does it trigger me? Do I feel anger towards Justin Trudeau? Like pay really close attention to the inner movements of your mind in response to that incredible mirror that's in front of you right now called the world. And if any of it makes you uncomfortable, makes you angry, pissed off, you have something to heal in yourself. So for the last 2 years, that's basically all I've been doing is using every catalyst, every form of deception, manipulation, and corruption to take inventory of myself and say, why is this making me so angry? Clearly, part of that must be in me. And I've been finding those parts of me that do have the tendency to be greedy or selfish or whatever, and forgive those parts of myself and heal them and love them. That's the number one thing we have to do, right? The problems aren't actually out in the world because the Justin Trudeaus, the Klaus Schwabs, the Joe Bidens, we could go on and on. They manifest out there because they're a collective reflection of what's in all of us. Millions and millions and millions of us have those same energies, which is the reason we tolerate leadership like that, which is the reason we vote for people like that. So until I heal it in myself, I have no right to judge someone out there doing it because I'm contributing to it energetically, right, in consciousness. So that's number one, self-healing, self-responsibility. But number two, and this is the most important point, I think, of bringing real change to the world. We see this united globalist elitist agenda right now. They call it the New World Order, right? The Great Reset. We see these attempts to cause these global events, pandemics, climate change hysteria, digital banking, digital currency, social credit, social justice stuff. These are all different ways they try to divide us, get us into fear, panic. And then they say, hey, we are your saviors. We have the answers for you. Put your trust in us. And then people say, I'm scared. I'm separate. I'll do whatever you say. And we get their vaccine passport. We get their digital currency. We bank where they tell us to bank. And then they sink their claws in deeper, right? So the number one way to stop an abuser from abusing you is to distance yourself, to stop hanging around the person who's abusing you, stop feeding into them, stop spending time with them, stop giving them energy. So I'm really passionate about decentralization, becoming self-sustained, getting off the grid, unbanking yourself, becoming self-governing. These are all ways that we can instantly take power away from this debt slave matrix system and empower ourselves with it and take our power back. That'd be the second one. And then the third and also very important one is what we talked about a minute ago, which is do what you're passionate about. Do what you're feeling called to do. Gone are the days where you have to have a debt slave matrix job just to survive. We live in the most incredible opportunistic society ever with the internet, with all the technology available. You can do anything you're passionate about doing and make a living doing it. The only reason, and I stress bold, underline, italicized, red circle, only reason people don't do what they're passionate about is because they're afraid. They're afraid they're going to fail. They're afraid that they won't be able to put food on the table. And outside of that, there is no reason not to do it. All the technology is available. All the resources are available. There's never been a greater time to be an entrepreneur and work for yourself, be your own boss, do what the universe has placed a passion inside of you to do. I mean, that wasn't as easy 50 years ago in our grandparents' day and age. If they saw the technology and resources we have available right now and the way we're not taking advantage of them like they would have, back in the Great Depression and stuff, like they would slap us across the face. I'm like, what are you doing? Wake up. You have all the opportunity in the world to do what you want. So I think we just have to realize that, right? That gone are those days where we have to be a slave to somebody. Everyone can be their own boss and do what brings them life and excitement every day. And I think that's a huge part of how we create the new earth.
Yeah, aho. I mean,
Uh-oh.
so this is the sort of song I've been singing for the last several years since I discovered my place in online entrepreneurship back in like 2012, and then starting this digital marketing agency for spiritual thought leaders in 2018, is like how much entrepreneurship and online entrepreneurship hands us an opportunity for almost total sovereignty.
Yep.
And that is amazing. It's a real sort of beacon in the world. I mean, I worked in a beige cubicle for years, not understanding why I was doing it, not fully getting it. But I think I needed to have that experience so that I could come, so that I could sit in this seat now and say, hey, I've been there, to those folks that are still stuck in the proverbial beige cubicle.
Yeah. Yeah. It's not like you have to work for yourself or be an entrepreneur. Like, if you want to work for someone, no problem. But like, you can find conscious companies, people who are in alignment with your values, and you can work for them and be a part of their vision. If it's a vision you share, you can build something with people. Like, you don't have to just sell your soul to the corporate technocracy of America to make a living anymore. It's a way that they create an illusion like, oh, this is the best job you can have is to work for Google or Apple or Facebook. And I worked at Google. Very few people there looked happy to me. You're a cog in the system. You're a number. You're not going to be in an environment that feels like you're owning it. It's part of your soul's mission here, most likely. Maybe some people are like, all they want to do is sit in front of a computer and code for someone. No problem. That's just as valid as anything. But I think the majority of us do have a passion, do have something that brings us, makes us come alive inside when we think about it. And that's important because you're going to give value to humanity, right? When you do what you're passionate about, you're going to give so much value to the universe that the law of attraction or reflection has to give that value back to you. So your chances of being very successful, financially successful, are way higher working for yourself or following your passion than working in the debt slave system, because it's really not designed to let you be wealthy, right? To a certain degree, maybe, but real success almost always comes from following your heart. And that's a big part of what we need in the world right now when we have this enormous wealth gap. I mean, unfathomable. Like, you can't even wrap your mind around it if you wanted to, because your imagination isn't big enough to understand the wealth inequality on our planet. It's sinful, if I can use that word. No one should ever hoard as much wealth as thousands of people are hoarding, when we have the ability to make everybody wealthy and happy and self-sustaining. We don't have to have poverty on this planet. We have the technology. We have free energy technology that's being suppressed to solve every problem on our planet. And it's because, again, those kind of handful of unfathomably wealthy, powerful people are making sure that no one else can do that themselves. So to do that yourself is to answer the call from the universe, do what you're passionate about, and give out value. And that value has to come back to you. And as more and more people do that, I think the gap will do this, and it'll gradually begin to narrow. And then we can start making societies, right, that actually work for everybody.
To me, those that are at the so-called top, in terms of money, right? It's no longer about money. It's no longer about them hoarding financial resources, as far as I can tell, because obviously they have enough. It's at this point, it's about power, and it's not just about having power, it's about, and you touched on this, I'm repeating you, but it's about ensuring that others do not have that power.
Precisely.
And a financial system that allows for, so a few individuals to hoard all of the financial resources at the top and then create a society that's completely dependent upon those resources and creating a debt system, ensures that nobody has that kind of power. And so what I'm hearing from you is that that we can take our power back. And this is what I believe too. We can take our power back, not necessarily by hoarding those resources, those exact same resources, but by creating a brand new system in its stead.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. That's exciting.
It's super exciting. And I have a question, just because I really want to, while I've got you. You've got a wealth of knowledge and understanding about, I think, a lot of esoteric traditions, and you have a really beautiful way of explaining them. And I'm wondering, there's the law of one and Ra, and then there's probably others too, but what do you know about like prophecies around this moment in time, or where we are right now, or what does the law of one say about it? I'm just so curious, since you've probably got some understanding about that.
Yeah, I do have some things I could say to that. From the law of one, there's a interesting passage where it might be the same passage where I quoted earlier, where they're talking about the slavery of a 9-to-5 work job, that no one should be forced to, quote unquote, work for 8 hours a day. Nobody works for 8 hours a day. We all know that. You could maybe get somebody to work for 4 to 5 hours a day, and the other 3, they're just brain dead, staring at their computer or their phone, waiting for work to be over. Unless you're doing what you're passionate and lit up about, you literally can't sustain energy that long to work that much a day. So it's a type of slavery that keeps people from self-discovery, spiritual actualization. Like when you leave for work at 7 a.m. and get home at 7 p.m., most people in major cities do that. What time do you have for meditation, self-introspection, reading, studying, praying? There's so much less time to spend on yourself and your own growth when you're, in bondage to that kind of a job every day. So in that conversation, Ross says, they ask Ross something about types of slavery on our planet. And Ross says, at this present space-time nexus, the different varieties of slavery on your planet is so vast that it beggars our ability to enumerate them. And you go, wow, like this is a 6th density social memory complex extraterrestrial who's telling people the amount of slavery on your planet blows our mind.
Wow.
We can't even put it into words, right? So it's like we have to start waking up to the reality of that, which is scary, which freaks some people out. They don't want to think about it, but it's like join the light side and wake up to it, because the more of us wake up, man, there's power in unity. There's strength in unity. And if we come together and just wake up to what's going on and say, okay, now we see the game that's being played. We see the puppet strings that were being pulled. So we're just going to leave that system. Have a great one. Do what you want to do over there. Anyone who wants to be a part of your globalist world, no problem. You guys do that. We're going to go over here, though, and make a society built on love and unity and service to others. And we're going to thrive. That's what's going to start happening on our planet. We don't fight anybody. We don't make anybody wrong. We make a new system and leave the old one, and the new system will make the old system obsolete. So the only other sort of prophecy I can think of that correlates to this, I've heard Dr. Zach Bush talk about this.
Love him.
And he talks about an ancient prophecy from I don't know if it was a Native American tribe, or it might have been a culture in South America. But they say that humanity has had essentially a broken wing for thousands of years, which represents the divine feminine. And because we've just had a huge masculine wing and a very, very tiny feminine wing, we've just been flying in circles. And they say that as of 2012, which is the Mayan calendar year, the year that Ra says we started shifting into 4th density, that was kind of a planetary event that happened. As of that year, humanity will start to grow out its feminine wing again. and the two wings will be able to be even and cause us to soar into the heavens and fly to our cosmic destiny. So I think we're in that period right now where the divine feminine is waking up, and that part of that waking up is realizing the forms of enslavement on the planet, because that control, that enslavement, deception, manipulation, that's the wounded masculine. That's what happens when the divine masculine becomes broken to a corrupted form of itself. It controls and it enslaves. It's all about deception. And so the divine feminine wakes up and sees that her masculine counterpart has been so distorted, and she begins to heal him and bring him back to to exalt him to his highest expression, which is to be aware, to witness, to see who and what we really are, to know myself, to be self-realized. That's what the divine masculine allows for. And so that process looks like a lot of shadow work, right? A lot of healing and a lot of awareness, which is what the masculine is, again, of what's really going on. So I see that prophecy playing out right now, and I don't know how much longer it's going to take, maybe another 100 years. But I feel very positive that humanity is headed in the right direction, and I truly believe our destiny is inevitable. And as challenging as COVID has been, the whole pandemic scene that we've watched unfold the last 2 years, it also is highly encouraging to me, because it has woken everybody up. Like, yes, there's still people asleep, but there's such an enormous percentage of this planet that's awake to the true reality of who our leaders actually are, what their intentions actually are, that I think it just isn't possible for them anymore to carry out their plan of world domination. There's too many people awake. And I think that they showed their hand too much. I think the, whatever you want to call them, the globalists, the Freemasons, the Illuminati, whatever, the deep state, they had this really pivotal moment in 2020. And I've heard some people who have more inside information than I do have said that they actually wanted to push that back to 2050, or that was their original plan. But some of the people in the upper echelons of the deep state were like, hey, we're not going to be alive then. We want to watch this plan unfold in our lifetime, so let's do it in 2020. So it was like 30 years sooner than they anticipated it being, which who knows if that's true, but I've heard that from people I see as credible. And they had this tightrope that they were walking, I think, where they have to carry out these plans to inch forward their plan of world domination. And I've heard Jordan Peterson give this great example of how an abuser takes power over their abused victim is they'll just take a few steps towards you and a few more and a few more until they're so close to you that you're like, hey, man, back off. Like, you're too close. And they go, oh, no problem. And they just stay there. And then once you calm down, they take another step forward and another step forward. You say, hey, I said stop it. But it's like, but they're not backing up, right? They're still inching forward towards you. That's what they were trying to do with COVID, was this huge step forward. And they had to do it in such a way that didn't wake too many people up, because everyone that wakes up never goes back, right? Once you're awake to the reality of the world, it's impossible to go back to sleep to it. Even if you wanted to, you couldn't. So they know that, right? So they're like, we have to do this slowly and carefully enough that we don't wake people up, too many people up, but also that we accomplish what we want, which is to take away medical freedom and things like that. And I think that they failed on that endeavor big time. I think they showed their hand way too much. I think too much information has been leaked and gotten out through all the vaccine stuff and the Wuhan lab leak. And like, people are waking up in mass right now. The trucking convoys have been a huge sign of that. And so I think that is a sign for us that, don't worry, humanity's waking up. Yeah, it's a painful process. Yes, we have to be aware of some darkness. None of us want to exist, but it does. So once we get through that, we're going to make an incredibly beautiful world. I really believe that.
When we talk about waking up, there's one piece of it that is waking up to the enslavement of the last several thousand years. But then there's another piece of it, which is waking up to who we truly are. Can you speak to that?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, this is all about the law of one. The law of one teaches that all is one. Everyone is one being expressing and knowing itself. And the more we become aware of that, the more we naturally want to take our power back from the people and places and things we've given it to. And that's what waking up means, right? It's not, you don't wake up to the fact that you're powerless and you have to fight and claw for your power back. That's not waking up. That's victimization still. You wake up to the fact that you've always been empowered. You've always had your power, and you unknowingly gave it away. You outsourced your power to leaders and whatever it might be. And so it's not actually as scary as, if it is scary, you're probably not really waking up yet, right? Because true waking up, I love this line in A Course in Miracles that says, true rest comes from waking, not from sleeping. Meaning, when you truly wake up to who you are as a divine being, as an eternal soul on an evolutionary journey, then you don't have any fears anymore. Because it's like, whatever happens to me in this life, it's just one blip on my soul's radar. It's just one little tiny lifetime in a line of thousands or millions of lifetimes spanning across the whole universe. So what do I care if this life doesn't go perfectly as I would want it to go? I'm here to self-actualize. So let me take absolute advantage of every catalyst that life is offering me. And you better believe what's going on in the world is probably the biggest opportunity the universe is giving everyone right now to self-actualize, to unlock your potential. And to me, it's always exciting. It's like, oh, I'm so glad to know that I gave my power away. Because if it was taken from me against my will, truly, then we'd all be screwed, right? We don't actually have our power. But when you wake up, you always have the realization of, it's always been my power and I give it where I want it to go. And so now that I know that it's my power, I don't have to be a victim anymore. I can be a self-empowered divine being and step into my destiny and wake others up to step into their destiny, because their destiny is also mine. We are one collective humanity. And when we know that, we will start marching towards that new earth, that 5D earth that we all know is possible. It's possible right now. If we could just unlock all of the different technologies that are being suppressed, if we could raise awareness about what's possible, we could make that world happen tomorrow virtually. And so that's really exciting prospect, right? That it isn't necessarily 100 years away. It's a moment of awakening away. And I think we're getting closer and closer to that collective awakening every day.
It's so beautiful. I remember as a young, maybe not child, but pre-adolescent, I remember having the very explicit thought that the world peace was totally possible. And however you want to say that, whether it's world peace or, some sort of awakening or evolution of humanity, I knew it on some deep, deep level that it was possible. And I remember being exasperated, like, we all just have to decide. We just have to have a very good critical mass, a significant critical mass of people, of the billions of people on the planet who just decide we're going to do it this way. We're going to do things differently. No more war. And of course, I let that go because it seemed naive at the time. But what's so beautiful about this time and this moment is that my childlike wonder, that so-called naive optimism, that world peace is possible if we all just wake up to it and make that choice, that it's actually happening.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, look at the Russia-Ukraine situation. I don't know anybody that was like, yeah, war should happen. Like Russia should, everyone is collectively like, oh, sigh, gasp. I wish this wasn't happening. Why are we still going to war? It's been encouraging to me in the sense that it is a thing that is working its way out of our collective. This idea of war ever being a good idea or ever being something we should do. I think we're learning that lesson very powerfully right now. It's just that, again, humanity collectively, the citizenship, we could say, doesn't really decide whether or not war happens, right? The global elites who control the armies and stuff decide that. And so until we take a certain amount of power back, they're going to go to war whenever they want to, essentially. But it's good that we're seeing this no response to war, because at some point, the elites who want to carry out war for profit and power movement and all of that, they simply won't be able to, because even the soldiers in the army will be like, no, I quit. Like, I'm not going to war. I'm not going to do what you want me to do. I'm not going to go kill my brother and sister in Ukraine or wherever, just because you say that I should. we're getting really close to that happening. So that's also encouraging.
Beautiful. I love it. Not war, but I love that the idea of a soldier standing up and saying, no, I'm not doing this. It's a beautiful vision. That's a true warrior of love. That's what I have a 7-year-old son, and that's what I tell him. I just say, if you want to be a warrior, because little boys like to be like, oh, battle. And I'm like, then you're a warrior for love,
warrior,
baby. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
exactly. Aaron, I want to make sure that we have plenty of space for you to talk about what you do and what your offerings are and how people can find you and how you're passionate, like your passions about what you offer to people, so that they can easily sort of, find whatever courses you've got, whatever creations you have, all of this.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, well, thank you. Right now, I'm really excited about a series that I started a couple of months ago on my YouTube channel, which is kind of like something I've been working on for a long time to package all the different things I teach and am passionate about teaching into one kind of modality. And I just call it spiritual intelligence, which is kind of my take on trying to put a kind of spiritual IQ map onto spirituality so we can see, what are the different levels? What is spiritual intelligence, first of all? And what are the different levels of spiritual intelligence so that we can kind of know where we are and where we're heading towards? I just feel like if you have a map of the territory you're traveling, it makes the territory a lot less intimidating, right? So I map the SQ chart up to the 7 energy centers, the chakras, and just sort of show how these chakras are really just 7 different levels of spiritual intelligence that exist within all of us. And they are also our potential that we can unlock and have total access to if we want them bad enough. And so I've sort of put different language to these teachings in the sense that I don't use, in this series, I don't use the terms like enlightenment or self-realization as much, because I've discovered that those terms are, I don't want to say exclusionary, but people feel unqualified when they hear something like enlightenment. They go, enlightenment, that's like the Buddha's state of consciousness. I could never, be enlightened. That's way too advanced. And it's so sad for me because it's like, no, you have no idea what you're capable of. You just have to want it bad enough. And so if we put different language to these things, maybe people will feel more invited to pursuing them. So I like to use the term mastery or self-mastery instead of self-realization. The term illumination instead of enlightenment. It's just a state where you've illuminated your mind from the shadows of darkness, where you're no longer deceived within yourself anymore. So it's like, oh, that doesn't sound so impossible. In fact, if you're going to master anything in this life, shouldn't it be your own self? I sure think so. So I've been doing this series for, this is my 7th episode coming out this Thursday, just explaining step by step what spiritual intelligence is, showing the SQ chart, and just the different tools and resources available to us to begin raising our spiritual intelligence and moving towards a state of mastery. And so the episode I'm releasing this week is talking about the 3 states of mastery. And it's basically states that correlate to the upper 3 chakras, or the spiritual chakras as we call them, the throat, the third eye, and the crown. These are actually states of self-mastery, right? And the first state I call the I am state at the throat chakra level, which is where we gain, we enter a permanent state of what I call mind-heart coherence, which is where our feminine and masculine energies are now perfectly balanced. So I represents mind, am represents heart. I am is when they become one. And we live life with the heart leading rather than the mind, the intellect. The mind is, we could say, endowed with the wisdom of the heart. So we're no longer living in reactivity to life and, ego consciousness or separation. But when the heart leads the way, we feel one with life. We love life. We're joined with it. And that's the foundation of the first state of mastery that leads to the second state, which is the third eye level, that I just call the flow state. And in Advaita Vedanta traditions, it's referred to as non-doership, where you've become so connected to reality and the fact that you're not a separate individual body or person all by yourself, right? But you are the universe experiencing a person. At a certain point, you actually start to lose the sense of doing anything. And you have this sense of being lived, right? Everything that my body does is a movement of the universe. And that's really what the flow state is. So, like Michael Jordan being in the zone playing basketball, that level of mastery is someone who's living in the flow state, meaning they're always in that state of total, complete presence with the moment, and they're never separate from the moment anymore, which means even what the body's doing is part of the moment. So that's the second state of mastery. And then the third and final state correlates to the crown chakra, which is called the channeling state. And that's a very rare advanced state of self-mastery that, very few beings on our planet have achieved. Levels of the great avatars like Christ, the Buddha, Zoroaster, Krishna, Babaji, and many others we don't know about probably. I'd put Lao Tzu in that category. I'd put Huang Po in that category. Basically, people who are so tapped into divine reality that they speak like they're God, right? They talk, everything that comes out of their mouth sounds like they're channeling divine intelligence. And it's because they are, right? They're in that state of total God union and God consciousness that just their existence on the planet itself becomes the greatest service to humanity by raising the vibration of the planet and inspiring other people around them, lighting people on fire, right, with that divine power they carry. So it's such an exciting series. I'm loving teaching it so far and getting an amazing response. So if any of that sounds interesting to you and you want to dive into that teaching modality more, you can find it on my YouTube channel and go to my playlist series, playlist tab, and you'll find the Spiritual Intelligence series, and all the episodes will be there kind of lined up in order.
Awesome. I can't wait to check those out. That sounds great. I mean, I love how no matter how much diving into a lot of this type of content I've done over the years, I mean, I've been a seeker my whole life, how there are still such fresh and new ways, at least to me, that I can hear about it. I mean, I love how you describe the I being the mind and the am being the heart and the I am being the throat. I also love that I am the universe experiencing a person. Oh, that's beautiful. I mean, I might have to quote you on that. That's so cool. So yeah, thank you as always for the expansion that you bring and the illumination that you convey. I really appreciate it.
Thank you so much.
And yeah, thank you for being here on the show. And I just want to, we'll have links, in the show notes, but I just want everyone head over to Aaron's Instagram. If you're on on Instagram, it's Aaron Abke. So Aaron, Aaron, Abke. Same thing on YouTube. And highly recommend the Law of One series, although I'm also pretty excited about this new spiritual intelligence modality that you're creating. So that's good shit too. So anyway, thank you so much, Aaron, and thank you all for listening. And
thank you so much, Sarah. It's been a pleasure talking with you.
Yeah. Have a gorgeous rest of your day. And blessings to you all.
Yes. Namaste.